Hi everyone, this is Marlene with Dixie Quilters, and tonight we're going to look at some of the Civil War blocks. You know, I get a lot of comments from my readers, my watchers, that the Civil War blocks and the stories behind them are sort of interesting. And well, they are to me too. I'm very interested in this. And the last time we talked about Civil War blocks, I was curious why I had thought we talked about the Old Maid's Puzzle, but we didn't. Well, at least it was not filmed and edited yet. I don't know where it would be if it wasn't, but we didn't talk about it. So the first one I want to talk about today is called the Old Maid's Puzzle. And you know, I changed it a little bit, I think. You see that one? I think I inverted the chevrons, possibly. Or I just used a different color sequence so that the center parts should have been different. I don't know. The other option was more colors involved. So it just the change of the colors really gives it a different vibe, I think. But I like it. It's our color range. There's those two oranges. Lovely. So let's read about this. The Old Maid's Puzzle. Well, you can imagine with a Civil War that killed how many people? 1 million? That many at that point? Not sure. But all the young men. Let's see. It says, here it says, a loss of more than 500,000 men cost many women any chance of marriage. Yikes. One of the old maids was Jefferson Davis's youngest daughter, Variana Ann, known as Winnie. Born in 1864, she was hailed as the daughter of the Confederacy. And I'm reading from the Civil War Sampler by Barbara Brockman. And she has quoted from Joan Cashin, the First Lady of the Confederacy, Varina Davis's Civil War, Boston, Harvard University Press, 2008. Okie dokie, here we're going to go about poor Winnie, because she fell in love with the absolute wrong guy. You know, we think, you know, if you choose what is it, you're supposed to be equally yoked. Well, these poor people, these poor kids, I tell you, listen to this one. Not only was her boyfriend a New Yorker whose mother was Louisa May Alcott's first cousin, he was also grandson to the abolitionist Samuel May. And after 5 years of engagement, they gave up. They never saw each other again, and neither of them married. Now that is sad. Now, then they go on to say, was the rift due to finances, Winnie's devotion to her father's memory, or the pressure of a romance played out in the newspaper headlines and editorials? Well, that's certainly apropos in this day and age, but in those days, I don't think people were as interested in having their personal lives made into a blockbuster. So this pattern was called the Old Maid's Puzzle as early as 1910, according to this, but 1910 is the first indication that this pattern would have been referred to as the Old Maid's Puzzle. And let's see, the block can remind us of the women who lived beyond society's definition of proper roles. And in those days, they either were married or you were an old maid. Bingo bango. And this is whether by choice or by chance. Now, what about the women that were teachers? Didn't they get to have some respect as teachers? I hope so. Or was it in those days where the teachers men? And, oh, well, I can't remember. Well, anyway, that's the Old Maid's Puzzle. That's another history lesson for another day. Okay, our next one is called the Twin Sisters. The Twin Sisters. It looks like just a big giant pinwheel. One had it in 2 color and one option had it in 3 color. And I made it in 2 color. I just love that paisley. It reminds me of the paisley in that picture. Okay. Twin sisters. It is thought to be symbolic of liberty and the union. It's, you know, and the title Twin Sisters was also the, okay, let me start this thing. The Twin Sisters, Liberty and Union. It was a patriotic image. They used it to sell everything from tobacco to who knows. But also, the Twin Sisters referred to the Union and the Confederacy, a family locked in heartbreaking quarrel. And I think the nun personified the split better than the Todds of Lexington. Now, does that name ring a bell? Todd? That was the wife's name of President Lincoln, Mary Todd Lincoln. She was the Union's first lady. Her half-sister, Emil Todd Helm, was married to the Confederate General Ben Hardin Helm. I think he was a West Pointer. I'd have to look that up, but if I remember correctly. You know, most of these generals, both North and South, went to officers training together at West Point in the previous years. It's like they all knew each other real well. Okay, after Ben's death, this is referring to the Confederate General Ben Hardin Helm. After Ben's death at Chickamauga, I think that's how you say it, Emily arrived at the White House to stay with her half-sister and brother-in-law. Gossips talked, the press had a heyday, Lincoln's enemies gloated, but the sisters, dogged by tragedy, consoled each other. And this last part here is so interesting. The girls said, we could not open our hearts to each other as freely as we would like. This war comes between us like a barrier. It closes our lips, but not our hearts. Isn't that lovely? And this is referenced from the author Stephen Barry, House of Abraham, Lincoln and the Todds, A Family Divided by War. And that was the Houghton Mifflin Company of Boston in 2007. Now this, I loved this. This was very interesting. Both of these blocks are very emotional. Okay, now apparently I have skipped the Union Square, so I'll have to come back to that on our next movie. Yes, Lynn, it's a movie. Okay, and now this is about the Courthouse Square. That's Lynn Lockhart. She's always teasing me about making movies. Okay, so they are videos that we are uploading to our channel. Well, I make movies. Okay, Courthouse Square. Now, this is what I put together. Can you see it okay? Almost. Let me tip you forward a little. Try not to knock you over. That is the Courthouse Square. And see, it is shown like that. So, one issue, block by Barbara Bachman, was a variety of blues with a variety of yellows and some red pinks around the exterior. And the block by Roseanne Smith, also noted in Barbara Bachman's book, is all in tans with sort of a purpley brown. So I used the purpley brown with a lovely beige flower. So the little flower. And this is a fabric. I just love that fabric. Sort of purpley. Just a hint. I like it. Okay, so this, the courthouse, oh, this is another good story. Oh boy. Okay, so this is about the McLean family. Wilmer, what a name. Wilmer McLean liked to say that the Civil War began and ended at his house. He did have a point. This is Barbara Bachman's speaking or referencing Jeffrey Ward, Ken Burns, and Rick Burns. You know Ken Burns, he's got all those wonderful movies out about historical things. The Civil War, An Illustrated History, New York Random House, 1992. Wilmer McLean liked to say that the Civil War began and ended at his house. He had a point. With his wife, Virginia McLean, he lived near the Manassas battlefield. Does that name ring a bell? Manassas, most horrible, I think it was the beginning of the war. In the summer of 1861, a cannonball from the first big battle crashed into the chimney and fell into the simmering pot of stew. Well, I would say that their house was in the line of fire for the beginning of the war in Manassas. So the McLean family, the father thought, well, let's move you to a safer area. So he moved to the quieter part of Virginia near a small town called Appomattox. Good grief. So in 1865, negotiators working on surrender terms persuaded Mr. McLean to offer the parlor of his brick home for the signing of the terms. A dignified room in which to end a horrible war. So the Virginia McLean's Appomattox parlor suffered more damage than her kitchen near Manassas. Souvenir collectors immediately started ripping off things in her home, anything about it. They carried away the chairs that General Lee and Grant had sat on and the table that had held the papers. But in the context of the war, her trials were small. But like so many Southern women who had been rich before the war, she spent the rest of her life with only memories of prosperity. And because they eventually lost the second house to tax payments. So I don't know where they ended up living. Yeah, it says the McLeans lost their brick house because they could not pay the mortgage. Oh, not the taxes, the mortgage. Courthouse Square recalls the surrender agreed upon in the parlor at Appomattox Courthouse. The block dates from the 1840s. Well, now see, this is one of the earliest. This block actually dates from way early, 1840s. You know, a lot of these blocks, they said earliest identified 1910, so this is right back there. It recalls the surrender. Block dates to the 1840s, the days of the album quilt fashion, a variation of a pattern given that name by Carrie Hall in her 1935 book, Romance of the Patchwork Quilt. There is a lot of historical books that you could research on this. This is very interesting stuff. All right, well, so that's 3 blocks today. It is the Old Maid's Puzzle, the twin, was it the twins or the twin sisters? The twin sisters. I have a set of twins, you know. They were so different as children. Oh my gosh, they were like different families, but they're close as close can be. Absolutely wonderful. So these are twin sisters. And then we have the Courthouse Square right there as I tip you forward so you can see it. Now I'm going to put it together in rows because they're on point. And then I'll put the rows together. So there we are, 3 blocks, middle of the month. We're moving right along. Okay, thank you. Nice to talk with you again. If you want to read more about the history of the Civil War, of course, please search out the Barbara Brockman book. But I was looking on Fat Quarter Shop to see if they still had the book, and both Missouri Star and Fat Quarter Shop do not have this particular book, Civil War Sampler. But they do have a newer encyclopedia of Civil War something or other, made by and written by Barbara Brockman. So it's like the newest expanded edition. It sounds wonderful. But you can find the Civil War Sampler book on, I believe, Etsy and Amazon. I was looking for both of those places, make sure people who read or see these would be able to access that. But I'm very interested to see how the encyclopedia of the Civil War blocks is going to be how much more are they going to provide for us in it other than what's here, because this is super. Anyway, good talking with you. Have a good evening. Have a good week. Talk to you next weekend. Bye-bye.